St. Colin.
Waving at Chris
Oh, Chris as well.
Chris is online.
on Teams, yeah.
Where's he? Where is he? Can we talk to him?
I'm just saying, oh,
Well, if you call out, he'll hear you. He's,
Chris?
yeah, he said something, but it's not coming through yet, so.
I hope it was nice.
I read lips.
He looks like Garth Brooks. It's got headset, microphone. He's well prepared. Holy crap. Coffee in hand out of a very elegant ceramic mug that somebody has fired for him.
he's laughing.
Okay, so this is my surface that we're putting in? Yeah. Okay.
All right, anybody that's tuned in, we're just getting all the technology working in here, and then we'll be right at it. I used to have Councillor Barry way over there on budget, so I'm not sure if
She did that on purpose.
Yeah.
gotta see where the
Tomorrow.
changes tomorrow apparently.
I got the shorts
I
going
hate
this
to,
week.
if you're at the table today, you're not at the table tomorrow, so.
Yeah. Jane just do.
I'd be out in the hallway, not in the chambers.
I'll be behind the screen.
Yeah, there's a spot.
Better way to be out in the hallway, not in the chambers.
Reminiscent of high school days, maybe.
Yeah.
Or elementary school.
There he is. Wait, no, you're not there. Where are you? Where's Barry go?
Right here.
Okay, we'll go over there. I was gonna say, wow, we already took away your seat.
You were live already, Amber.
Yeah, took it out, put it all the way
Put in the hallway, right in the corner.
in the bathroom.
Yeah, there's a chair right back there.
Yeah, I know, the mayor knows too.
I don't know what a Vontae
Okay,
is.
we're good
It
to go.
doesn't
Thank you.
affect our operations.
No,
Bonte?
no, that's the table.
I saw they were having a Vontae maintenance starting at 8:30. Okay, I hope that's
That he was able to leave some space for you. I don't know, I was kind of looking at how much room I had here. 4 years of binders and stuff.
Now, Colin, if this was anything like school, you'd be first up for your presentation.
Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah, hurry.
Like when I used to go bowling, it'd be like, I'd be late coming home, and my wife would stand at the door and go, handing my shoes and my ball, and oh, it's bowling. Like first ball down the thing, into the gutter and go, oh. One time with a frozen ball that was in my trunk,
ooh,
and it just shattered.
really?
There's just nothing left of it.
Your worship, are we having the master plan jar this year again?
Sorry?
Are we having the master plan jar again this year? Like the swear jar, where every time we hear the word master plan, $5 goes in?
We've been kind of off that word for so long that might be refreshing to hear it a couple of times. So
I better find a
We
replace
might
on
need
my-
the
on my,
$5 every time they
speech
mention
here.
it.
I guess we could use
I better find a replace on my speech here.
COVID could be the trigger word if you
Could be
want to
the
have a
trigger word
word
this
for collecting
No
some.
kidding, right?
Pivot,
I hear you.
no pivot.
A little bit,
Yeah, you got quoted on pivot in the newspaper, right?
which I didn't say. Yeah,
Did you
get that?
Quote,
Yeah,
we had to pivot.
I think we knew right off. He
How are
did
you,
not
man?
say that.
Oh, yeah.
You're good?
It's like,
You're feeling good? You're not coughing, you're not sneezing, you're
Never unless I'm talking about basketball.
yep, I'm feeling good, no sneezing. Get back to normal here.
Yeah.
Good? Wait,
could talk
You
to
can tell,
Councillor Chaboyer there.
you tell
She's a
Luke
big
and I go to the liquor
basketball
store.
fan, big
Red
Raptors
Raiders kind
fan.
of guy.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about basketball here, I said we should talk to Jan. She's,
That's true.
Yeah,
These are
I
the-
think I'm probably
I couldn't drink it, but I
becoming a
actually got
super
sent to the
fan.
liquor store to
Yeah.
go.
yeah.
I'm
Joe
not
just
sure,
like the
man.
idea of free.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. I don't know why,
Actually,
but I do.
picked
Yeah.
up,
And I
my
just
box
love
at
them. In
Len's
the middle of
office.
watching that Netflix
My
series
oldest
on Michael
boy,
Jordan.
my oldest boy stops at the
Oh,
liquor
good.
store to get
Yeah.
them for his mom
Yeah,
all
well
the time.
done, so.
We're all ready. We're just waiting to
Yeah.
hit the high sign. Okay, so apparently we are good to go, and as we often know, we can easily fall behind fairly quickly because there is a great deal of good information to come on board. So welcome everyone, and everyone out there in TV land or YouTube or whatever you have that are tuning in. Thank you very much for joining us and paying attention, especially all of our department heads that will be making presentations. Today is kind of information day for council. Well, all different department heads will be making presentations, and council has the opportunity to ask them questions to get us prepared for the heavy lifting that takes place all day tomorrow. But for opening remarks, I'm going to turn it over to our illustrious city manager, Mr. Ron Bowles, who's going to open us up, and then we're going to get straight away to department heads. So go ahead, Mr. Bowles. While he's taking his position, I will tell the public that we're well spaced out. Councillors are wearing masks on and off, depending whether they're speaking, eating, drinking, but our staff have employed all the best safety measures. We do have one councillor participating on Teams today, but and most of administration will be coming to us via Teams. So go ahead, Mr. Bowles.
Thank you. On behalf of City and Brandon employees, your management team has compiled this year's draft budget for Council's consideration. I thank them all for their hard work and dedication, especially the Finance Department. Now, I want to acknowledge right away that the proposed budget includes a tax increase. And because it's there for good reason, that I thought it would be helpful to put things into context as to how it impacts the taxpayer. So for the last many years, tax increases have been less than 1%. The average homeowner paid an extra about $10 to $20 per year. Last year, the city was acting, or council was acting in good faith to minimize increases to the community because all of the unknowns due to the pandemic. The city kept taxes low by using federal COVID funds and dipping into savings. These savings have run out, but as you know, costs continue to rise. And you could think about fuel or building costs or even our own personal finances. So this leaves us in a difficult spot. To maintain service levels, we must increase taxes. Of course, there's the alternative to decrease some services or to borrow, and these are also good strategies. This year, the tax increase is proposed at 6.9%, being an increase of $130 per average homeowner. So after careful consultation with all departments and considering the quality of services needed in Brandon, this is an appropriate budget for 2022. Now, the budget contains all municipal service, and there's like 50 of them, and a few enhancements for the community. And by way of example, much more work is going to happen in downtown, helping people, the economy, and safety. We have a robust plan to rebuild, repair, and replace equipment and infrastructure that it no longer meets the needs of the community, and we have some important upgrades. So I want to point to an improved ability to manage big rainfalls. And yes, a brand new outdoor sports complex to meet our community's recreation needs. So as your city manager, I'm pleased that the capital budget, so that's your long-term assets, is much enhanced with the financial help of the province and our federal counterparts, and through a modernized funding strategy. And what I mean is, every project in our 5-year plan has a preset funding source. So we are well set up for the future. On the day-to-day side of the budget, the operations plan presents a flatline budget. A budget that's well under inflationary indices when you take out the COVID adjustments and funding the capital program, which I talked about earlier. Mayor Crest, councillors, for the next 2 days, your department heads and your executives are available to help you. Some are online, actually many of them are online, and some are in this room. We are at your service, and we're proud to serve the community of Brandon. And we look forward to putting into action the outcomes of your budget decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowles. Certainly a great way to frame things up for us to help people understand why we're at the starting point that we're at, and also put a little more positive context around some of that. So we do have a lot of information to plow through, and so we are going to wade right into it. And without further ado, our very first speaker is on the topic of water and wastewater utility. Our engineer that looks after that whole section, Alexia Stangerlin. So welcome, Alexia, who is on Teams, and we look forward to your presentation.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. I'm happy to present to you first this morning. And I will be presenting the entire utility. So that's the corporate services, operational services, and development services portions. As a reminder, these cost centers are funded primarily by water and wastewater rates, with a few ancillary revenues, and there is no impact to taxes or the mill rate. The utility balances between expenses and revenues, finally with contributions to the water distribution or wastewater reserves. I was going to start with my slides. I don't see them up. Does everybody else see them?
No. Chris now, though.
We go.
Okay, here we go. So we'll start with the main drivers of budget changes. The new chemical building, this is at the water treatment facility. You will remember that it's been under construction for a number of years, and it will come online this spring. And so to heat and power this facility, at the very least, there is a certain increase in costs. So you'll see that in the water treatment facility budget. And within that chemical building, there is that change from gaseous chlorine to liquid sodium hypochlorite, and there is an additional cost associated with that. Sodium hypochlorite is more expensive, but is far, far safer for both the community and the operators. So a warranted change, an increase in costs, and that increase in cost for chemicals, really, we've seen it as a trend in all of our chemical costs, so I will point that out as we get into those cost centers. Reinvesting in professional development. So our technical staff throughout the entire utility requires professional development hours to maintain certifications and memberships in their associations. And with COVID, it has been challenging. But we are planning to reinvest with things opening up and more opportunities being available to maintain those certifications because they are required of us. And it really leads me into the next bullet, which is a change in classification of facilities. So treatment facilities and our distribution and collection systems are regulated by the province, and they set classification levels for each of those facilities based on their complexity. In 2022, we expect our distribution and collection systems to change classification levels purely based on population size that they serve. And with the census results coming out, that classification could be imminent, those changes, and associated with those changes are the certification levels of our staff members that operate those systems. So we have to invest in those employees to maintain the operation of our systems in accordance with provincial regulation. So I will point those out as we go through the cost centers, but it is a significant increase to pre-COVID levels. I'll move on to major purchases and projects. What I've listed here are all capital projects, and they have such significant costs that it makes sense to list them here. Our water treatment facility upgrade continues. I mentioned our chemical building is nearing completion, but with the approved funding with our federal and provincial partners for additional upgrades, we will be continuing with our tendering program and starting those next phases, which is very exciting. Water reclamation facility shop began last year with our design, and we have partnered with the Manitoba Water Services Board in funding for this project as well. And it dedicates a shop at the wastewater treatment side for staff members to work there on all of those assets and increasing assets in wastewater versus kind of housing them all at the water treatment facility. We are expanding. Municipal pretreatment roof repairs. So you'll remember that we've done a number of upgrades in wastewater over the last 20 years, but that was really on the process side. Our existing facilities, while we saw improvements to the equipment, we didn't necessarily touch the buildings, and we've after assessments, we've found that roof repairs are needed, and they're significant to protect those assets that we already invested in. So that will be tendered this spring as well. The Southwest Lift Station is currently in the design process. It supports development in Southwest Brandon, and I just list the lift station, but ultimately there's also force main and gravity sewer associated with that project that will be significant to development in Brandon. And of course, our water main replacement program continues. It is an annual program, and in 2022, we have over $2 million budgeted. Council strategic plan, of course, drives our every day in our programs. And the first bullet really speaks to kind of the asset management strategy in the utility across multiple projects. I've already mentioned kind of a rehab project on the roof repairs, and we constantly do those assessments, and they really drive our program, in particular in capital. Providing additional treatment capacity, and I mean this in both wastewater and water. Obviously, the treatment facility upgrade may be the trigger there, but certainly with this Southwest Lift Station addition, we would be increasing our wastewater treatment capacity because all of that flow ultimately ends up at our facility. And finally, with the change in our org structure with our general manager moving from one division to another, there is a opportunity to look at some of those synergies and seeing where we can work more closely together. Of course, we already do that, but changing staff can often bridge the gap. So that certainly will drive 2022. Next slide, please. Speak to rate revenues. In the past few years, there's been a more conservative approach to projecting rate revenues, in part due to COVID, but also the unknown weather conditions that we've been experiencing. We've kind of swung from drought risk to heavy rain events, and it can be challenging to predict how much water demand there will be. So we've found this conservative approach effective during the pandemic, and we've essentially projected an almost flat water usage and revenue. However, you'll see a favorable change there due to the itemized second series rate rider charge that funds the borrowing for the chemical building construction, and that is a direct offset. The expense is shown in the water treatment facility cost center. There's no expected rate change in 2022, but our rate study will be completed this year and presented under a separate cover. Utility administration, these are for the internal support services to the utility. And the slight unfavorable change is nominal salary increases and some contract services increases for meter reading software and an allocation for auditing armored car service, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. Visitor stations, we've reduced our parts and materials, but you see a slight increase in budget due to itemizing a couple of our contracts that we do annually, not separated into lines. So that includes our crane inspections and our generator load testing, which are really safety measures that we need to take. And we've done the same approach in lift stations, so you'll see that increase as well. We've also added contracts budget to add air conditioning in a couple of our lift stations. That will help extend the life of some of those assets that run a little warmer than usual. So that's the motors, the drives. So we feel that's a warranted increase and addition to those existing facilities. Maintenance operations. So this is the first cost center you'll see an increase in professional development again. There's a slight increase in salaries as well, but we've reduced our equipment purchases and fuel. So since December 2020, our maintenance group has been split, which is not normal. We share maintenance staff between water treatment and wastewater treatment, but due to COVID, we have separated them, and they've been apart for over a year. And that hasn't had an impact on our fuel costs because the individuals aren't traveling as far, they're staying where they are. Purification and treatment. Oh, no, I've missed one. Municipal pretreatment, excuse me. We have reduced contracts, but there is a slight unfavorable change here from 2021. Unfortunately, we under budgeted our heat and gas requirements in 2021. So we've had based on a repair that was previously done. And unfortunately, it was under budgeted. So in 2022, we've increased back to what we actually spent in 2021. Purification and treatment. This is where we see that increase in sodium hypochlorite cost versus gaseous chlorine. And as I previously mentioned, there has been a general increase in chemical costs, and we attribute this partly to fuel and delivery costs, which we, of course, don't have much control over. We do our tender for all of our chemicals in the fall, so those prices are now set for 2022. Sewage lagoon operations. The single largest cost in this cost center is our biosolids program. In 2022, we are handling our largest cell, that's 3C, and it has the largest volume of biosolids, so our cost has increased to remove all of that material. we're also replacing a few of our two supernatant pumps, which are at the end of their useful life. Utility admin engineering, you'll see a favorable change in this account, or a favorable change due to our allocation of revenues to our water distribution and wastewater reserves. So it shows as an expense in this account, and it balances the entire utility across all of those, all of the divisions. So it shows as a favorable change. However, it is a decrease in the actual contribution to those reserves based on additional expenses in 2022. You'll also notice in utility admin engineering that contracts has gone down, but the costs associated with that have just been relocated to software and licensing. And that's, we feel it was a better place to put them because they aren't really contract work when we purchase our AutoCAD licenses and modeling software. They are software licenses, so we've itemized them accordingly now and tried to do a better job of that to be more transparent. You'll see a slight increase in consulting, and it has to do with a bit of a relaunch of our asset management program, which I believe Mark Allard from engineering will speak to. Excuse me. The water reclamation facility shows a significant unfavorable change, and that is almost entirely due to our coagulant usage. And this is a chemical used to precipitate total phosphorus in the wastewater, and it is dictated by the wastewater quality that we receive at the treatment facility. So we are regulated to maintain a certain level back to the environment, and we have to use this chemical to reduce that loading to the environment. And we have seen it as a trend. It has been increasing, and I believe council picked up on that in our budget reviews in the past couple of years. And to put everybody's minds at ease, it is a recoverable cost in some ways. We, through the fee schedule, you would have approved a cost for treatment of total phosphorus that gets charged to our industrial users. And we calculate that fee based on actual numbers on previous years. So it is slightly recoverable. You'll see in this cost center, this is where the revenues come in for those industrial users. So while it is an increased cost, like I say, it is directly recoverable for those portions not coming from the city. And finally, water treatment facility. As I already mentioned, there's an increase in cost due to the chemical building coming online. We have increased our professional development as well. There's been a significant turnover in staff at the water plant, and also had to increase our parts and materials. As we do the upgrade, of course, we have to continue operating the aging equipment, and there were some unexpected breakdowns that we had to repair already this year. So that was definitely warranted to increase that budget. Next slide, please. The utility storage garage, slight change, and that's primarily just water usage that's increased since the building was built in 2019. Operations bylaw, that is our public works educator, and this position is split between the general fund and utility fund. So there's little change here, and I understand grease trap inspections are going to be still a priority in 2022. Domestic sewer mains, you'll see a favorable change in contracts here. We have annually budgeted for a manhole rehab program, and it was always done through operating and through this account. In 2022, that program has changed to a capital program run through engineering, so it has been removed from contracts in this account for this year. Domestic sewer services, there's been a reduction in fuel costs based on 2021 actuals, and the cost for equipment maintenance has been reduced by fleet, so that's a good question for them on all cost centers. Hydrants. So we've had to increase contracts here for based on 2021 actuals. Anytime there's a dig near a hydrant that requires a hydro pole or gas line safety watch, there's a charge from hydro. So we've had to increase that based on expected work for 2022. Utility supervision. So there's some increase in salaries, but again, I will point out that professional development requirement has increased in this group based on that classification change. We have a number of training opportunities already identified with our annual Manitoba Water and Wastewater Association conference happening in Brandon this year. It's a great opportunity for staff to, almost every staff member from the utility to attend. So there is a cost associated with that and important for our professional development hours. On to water mains. We have a favorable change here, almost entirely from fleet capital contributions. Again, I think fleet has maybe changed their replacement program and timelines, which has then impacted the capital contributions. There are 9 vehicles in this cost center, so it has turned out to be a significant change with fluctuating contributions. Water meters, there's a new handheld reader device, additional parts and materials to get meter boxes out there for contractor use, so we can charge them for their water usage. And onto water services. So there's obviously significant change in this account. In 2021, Council increased the contracts by $100,000 for lead service replacements. And in 2021, that was balanced from a transfer from reserve. So it showed kind of a net zero impact to that budget. In 2022, however, we've rebudgeted $100,000 for lead service replacements, but did not balance it from a transfer from reserve, making sure those funds were used for more of a capital type program. So we've maintained that $100,000 expense for lead service replacements, and we've added $150,000 for freezing services. That's to lower them and insulate them for those individuals. So neither of those was balanced from a transfer from reserve, so that's why it shows a significant change in the overall cost center. And finally, water valves. So we've reduced some parts and materials based on current inventory and expected work for 2022. That's all I have. I'm ready for questions if there are any.
Alexia, and it's a very important area for us. Sometimes I consider kind of the unsung hero of the city. Our utilities department sometimes gets less attention, certainly a lot more attention if you have a water main break and there's no water coming out of your tap, and then people really come to realize how important it is. So thank you very much for covering all that. So we are going to open the floor to questions, and I noticed that Councillor Fawcett was first up, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Alexia. Always a good presentation. I'm not going to make you repeat any of that. But I didn't quite catch, I think you had mentioned in there that 2022 we are going to have a public utility review, because as much as this doesn't impact our budget today, public utility review could have a large impact. So was that the review taking place in 2022?
Through your worship to the councillor, I believe I heard the question correctly. Yes, the utility rate study has been ongoing, and the intent is to present the results of that study to council under separate cover later this year. So there will be no impact to the revenue side or to our water users in 2022 likely, based on kind of the presentation and then the public consultation piece. In all likelihood, the implementation will be in 2023.
Okay, yeah, just for clarity's sake, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Chaboyer and then Councillor Parker after that.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Alexis, for the presentation. It's a small question, but I think it's important. I always kind of keep an eye on outside users and making sure that they pay. And I notice the revenue is flat for septic disposal fees, and yet I see that our chemical costs for pretreatment and everything is extremely expensive. Do you make sure that you go over your formulas to ensure that outside users are paying appropriate amounts to cover the cost of providing that service?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Chaboy, yes, we do review our fees, and through the fee schedule, we did increase our septic disposal costs to those users. We haven't done a wholesale review in several years, but we certainly understand the increased cost to us. Again, wastewater quality is what drives those chemical costs, and it would be challenging to individually identify a particular user within the municipal system and what their impact is to that wastewater quality. So we have been doing more nominal type increases to the septic disposal fees, but certainly review it annually.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Parker is next, and then Councillor Cullen.
I did not have my hand up.
Oh, sorry. I thought you
Worship.
did give me a wave a little earlier there.
No, thanks.
Kind of like an auction here. You can't even
Yeah,
scratch
quick.
your nose.
Yeah, I scratched my ear.
Yeah.
Bought a horse.
Councillor Cullen, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to you, to Alexia. Under the heading of kind of this budget as being future investments in our development, I'm at what level will we be at once we're done the build out on the water treatment plant? Like, as far as we're investing in the future, we know that we will have cleaner water and meet higher standards when we're done with this project. But what are we looking for as far as the length of the service that we'll be able to provide, so that will we be able to service 50% more houses in growth, or like, what are we talking about as far as investing in the future, as far as what our capacity will be when we're done?
Through your worship, to Councillor Cullen, excellent question and a bit of a complex answer for you. When we started the project and the design lifespan of this upgrade, we looked at population growth, we looked at industrial growth, and we kind of settled on kind of a projection. And I believe at the time we settled on what we called a medium industrial water user that might come to Brandon. Of course, those projections change depending on whether another Maple Leaf comes to town, for example, which is a heavy water user. So in simple terms, we have a 25-year projection on this plant based on kind of what we calculated with our consultant, but certainly that changed dramatically if we had a big user. I'll also say this, the plant has been designed to be flexible in its operation. So it's a blend of our existing plant water, a new treatment process. So it's intended for a 50-50 split, but if we're meeting our water quality requirements, we could theoretically do a 30% split, 37% split, where we have additional capacity in our existing facility. And of course, that's in the short term. At the end of that lifespan, of course, we would be running everything full out, but there may be some opportunities to extend the life of the facility even beyond what we've designed to. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that helps out. So basically what I'm hearing then is that this will take care of our growth needs and our basic needs now, from retiring the old plant, starting up the new plant for probably the foreseeable future for the next 25 years. That's what I'm hearing. I think you might have lost her.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Okay. Just to follow up, my second question, if I may, Your Worship.
Yes.
Just in regards to lead pipes being removed, do we? I know you probably won't have this number with you, but I would like you to get back to me on it. Is how many lead services from the street to the residents have been removed this year? I'd just like to see if we're making any traction there, making any progress. And then the other thing is that has there been any discussion as far as the optional removal of the lead pipe once we have the street open in front of somebody's house, that if we find that there's lead pipe going from our service into their house, as far as converting that to a mandatory replacement? So that may be something that we may end up having to subsidize or help out with. I know we do have a small subsidy program, but over the next year, I, for one, would like to see that become a mandatory piece. So if we open up a street and we find 3 lead services going into houses, we may be able to put it on their water bill as a local improvement or whatever. But I think the days of having somebody opt out because that they don't have the finances or whatever, that we're going to need to help that out or put it on their water bill, because it's we can't keep doing this where we open up the street and then not replace those services when we've got them exposed. So have you had any thoughts of that or any discussions around the table over this budget year?
Through your worship to Councillor Cullen, so I'll start with the number of lead service replacements that happened in 2021. You're right, I will have to get back to you on that, and I certainly will. As far as replacements that happen when we come upon a lead service, I'll say this: we always replace it from the water main to the curb stop. So in the view of an entire service, that is only half the service. But I can assure you we do that every time, whether it's through our capital program or through operations coming up in the service that has a problem. That happens every time. As far as a subsidy program and policy, that has been top of mind. We have been working as administration on a new policy that we will be presenting to council. As you are aware, we initiated a new lead testing program based on the provincial regulations that were required of us in 2021, and it's certainly all part and parcel. You know, we're doing this testing, but we want to be able to give residents a peace of mind and an option for replacement. So we've been looking at the financials of that as well, and we'll be coming to council with a proposal of that in 2022.
So again, just for clarification, I know that we fix and remove all our lead piping there. Anytime we find it within our infrastructure, we replace it. It's mandatory. We just do that. But from the curb stop to the actual house, that's not happening right now. So if the residents decides that no, we don't want to do that, or we don't want to incur that expense, then we just go up to the curb stop, and then we leave that lead pipe that would run that would be privately owned from the curb stop into the meter. So I'm worried about that piece right there. As far as I know, that we're replacing our obligations of our pipes. We're not. Anytime we find it, we replace it. I'm worried about the fact that the homeowner himself may opt out of that, having it replaced from the curb stop to the house, and then the next owner of the house ends up with the same problem and same problem and same problem, and it goes on and on and on. So I'm looking for a solution, maybe where we can put it on some sort of a local improvement levy onto their particular bill for that particular house, so that the next 30 years or whatever, it ends up being paid for, and it's removed once and for all, and it's just a standard thing that so that the lead doesn't get passed on from homeowner to homeowner to homeowner. So
Great.
Anyway,
I will jump in. Thanks for that, Councillor Cullen. It's certainly a significant and important conversation, but I think it is a big one. So I think we'll have to defer, a deeper conversation on that, and I'm sure Alexia and her team will be happy to engage with that. I know they're equally concerned and interested in that topic, so thanks for raising it. And I didn't see any other hands at the moment. I want to just make sure I didn't miss anybody. Appears that we're good. So thank you very much, Alexia. Again, very important area, and you're a great one to lead us off. So thank you very much. And moving on now, still in the Development Services Division, next up will be in Engineering Services. Again, our engineer in charge of that, Mr. Mark Allard, will be taking that. So welcome, Mark, and take it away.
Good morning, Your Worship, and to the rest of the council. I again might wait till the presentation is put up. There we go. So fortunately, my budget and presentation is a little bit more straightforward than Alexia's. I'd just like maybe to start with, for a couple of minutes, a lot of our work is done kind of in office here, and I'd just like to touch on the areas that we support in the city. We've got 4 areas within engineering services, those being asset management, strategic infrastructure, design and construction, and land development. Our asset management group basically looks after a lot of the asset inventory within the city, and also doing condition assessments, which are very critical in the preparation and delivery of an overall asset management program. Next is our strategic infrastructure area, and they focus a lot on long-term planning, so about a 10-year outlook in planning and our annual budgets. They do a lot of water and wastewater modeling for the city, as well as a big effort in the review and creation of development charges for growth within the city. Our design and construction group is basically that. They look after the design and construction of our linear infrastructure, so drainage, transportation, water distribution, and wastewater collection within the city. And finally, our land development area, working with the development industry, undertaking design reviews and preparing and entering into development agreements, again, supporting the growth within our city. A lot of these efforts are supported by utility engineering budget, and we're certainly here in an effort to work along with utility engineering in the delivery of their programs. On the slide, you'll recognize that there is a slight change to our operating budget within engineering services. There's an increase in revenue in our area, but that simply is just moving the revenues from building moving permits into engineering services. And for the first time, we're 34th Street, which has been under construction now for, I guess, its second year, and planned to be cleaned up early in 2022. We've started paying principal and interest payments on that debenture that was taken last year to complete that project. Within engineering services, some of our major expenditures are obviously our salaries, and there's just a slight increase in that of $36,000. And that's just to bring on a couple of additional students to support our efforts in the field during the summer months. There are other engineering charges that total about $188,000. Some consulting fees, and those consulting fees focus on support services for some of our modeling that we do, as well as some traffic studies, and again, just to focus on the debenture increase or start of their debenture payment for about $350,000. our interest in supporting council's strategic plan are in the areas of service delivery. We are continuing on developing municipal servicing standards, and it's our plan here early in this budget year to go out to an RFP to hire a consultant to finalize all of those standards for us. We're also undertaking a review of our land development engineering process to try and find some synergies and maybe reducing a little bit of red tape in that area. Our financial sustainability efforts, we continue to develop and implement an asset management program. We are starting with some of the linear infrastructure that we're responsible for, with the desire certainly to expand that asset management program to all of the assets within the city. So we do have some consultants that are working with us in developing that asset management program. Again, a big key in my perspective are assessment of our existing assets, and those condition assessments will certainly drive the result of our asset management program. And we're also doing a review of our development charges, which is a requirement every 3 years within the bylaw. Growth and change, again, we're putting a lot of effort now into long-term infrastructure planning, so taking a 10-year look and focusing more on strategic capital investments. So if we go to the next slide, please. So again, a lot of what I just spoke about were engineering services. There is an unfavorable change here in this area of about $240,000. And again, focus being on the debenture for 34th Street. That's offset a little bit with the additional revenues that we're bringing in from permits. There's 3 other areas within engineering services that are supported from general revenues: reconstruction projects, sidewalk, and what used to be street resurfacing, and I've now identified it as street preservation. So out of general revenues, we've identified $325,000. That's also supported with an additional $1.27 million from gas tax, and those funds will support the completion of our Willowdale project. That was taken, we did a lot of work on Willowdale and 26th Street last summer. That project will continue, as well as reconstruction on Marquee Drive between Maryland and Durham. Our sidewalk program, and this isn't necessarily new sidewalks, it's more on preserving what we have and rehabilitation of some of that. So again, out of general revenues, there is $150,000. Those are also supported from an additional $150,000 from gas tax. We've moved $100,000 that was usually located in operational services, and we've brought it over to our side. In a lot of cases, we have delivered their work on their behalf. We just reallocated those funds from operating to engineering. So again, there's $400,000 there. We haven't finalized all of our sidewalk projects at this point, but there are numerous on the list, and we will certainly provide a list once we finalize that. The last area is street preservation. Again, coming from general revenue, there is $900,000. We supplement that with $1.4 million from gas tax, so approximately $2.3 million. Again, I've changed this from street resurfacing to street preservation, and focusing more on an overall pavement management or pavement preservation approach, where we're looking at milling and repaving streets. We're also going to attempt to introduce a new program of microsurfacing. So that's basically just a thin slurry that should deal with some ride and packing on the road. And finally, a route and seal program or crack fill program. Again, those streets that are in relatively good condition but are starting to experience some cracking, which is normal. Waterproof surface road is a very important strategy in preventing advanced deterioration of the roadway. Again, some of these funds typically sat in operational services, and just for the purposes of coordination, we've brought some of that funding over in this area, and we will coordinate the whole program. Some of those interventions will be delivered by operations such as the field program. We've also, this year, we're due for our street condition assessment. We do that on a 4-year cycle. So we will be doing condition assessment of our roadways. Again, can't stop emphasizing the importance of that driving the whole asset management program. And once again, we don't really have a finalized list. We've been working with our consultants and trying to finalize some software to be able to optimize the roads that we should be doing in each of those categories of repaving, microsurfacing, and route and seal. So it's our hopes that in the very near future we can provide council with an updated list, certainly for discussions. So overall, again, I think as a result simply of the principal and interest that we have to pay on vouchers, recognize that there's an increase of $240,000. So that's all I have, and certainly open to anything council has as far as questions. Through your worship to Councillor Barry. Yeah, and again, I think I understood your inquiries. You're looking for a little bit of information on $125,000 for the LiDAR refresh and $75,000 on the municipal surfacing standards. So engineering services relies heavily on the LiDAR survey information that we utilize for purposes of planning, asset management, kind of conceptual design. It comes in very handy when we're looking at drainage and drainage issues and that type of stuff. So we hope on a regular basis to update both our LiDAR information, and maybe just briefly, LiDAR is elevations or survey information that's captured either through an aerial drone or fixed-wing aircraft. So it updates all of our survey information and at a very accurate level, as well as the aerial photography. Aerial photography is something that we use on a regular basis again, from a planning purpose, from a design purpose, dealing with public complaints. It's a very handy tool for us to have updated aerial photography to be able to deal with a lot of those issues. So we had it in our budget last year and it was deferred. So we're very hopeful that it'll be given fair consideration this year. The municipal servicing standards, again, I referenced that earlier. That is been a bit of an ongoing project that we started this past year. And the land development industry is very interested in the city being able to present servicing standards that they can use for creation and design of the infrastructure within more of their greenfield development. So as an example, the Bellafield and Brookwood area. To date, the city has basically fallen on typical standards that are more of a national standard. And there's some variation in the things that can be accepted. Most cities, and something that we're falling short on, are our own servicing standards. So again, an effort that's been going on, and we hope to go out to work with consultants who are very familiar with these standards and finalize a document for us that can be utilized by the development industry, the consulting industry, either here in Brandon or in the province, as well as our own internal standards and guidelines for what we use to design our own infrastructure, whether it's an upgrade or a renewal, that type of stuff. So those are two areas that we're putting forward this year.
Thanks. And before you carry on, Councilor Berry, City Manager just wanted to add something to that response. Go ahead.
Yes, so municipal standards will increase our ability to, our speed in approving developments, and it's something that the development community is asking for.
Okay, carry on, Councilor Berry. If you're...
Thank you. My second question is going back to street preservation, Mark. Do we have a list yet for the milling repaving projects that are going to be looked at being done in the city this year? It's always a topic of conversation amongst residents as to whether their street's going to be on the list for this year for milling and repaving that are in rough shape.
Yeah, I apologize if that wasn't understood earlier because of the sound quality. Again, we've moved surface or street resurfacing, and we've retitled it to street preservation, where we're taking on a more encompassing role of optimizing street paving, microsurfacing, and route and seal. So 3 surface interventions that we want to adopt in the city. We're working with a software consultant to finalize an optimization program, and we're just a little bit behind in that, so we don't have a finalized list to present at this time. My hope is that in the very near future, we're able to present a list to council.
Thank you. Councilor Berry and Councilor Fawcett is next, followed by Councilor Lupke.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark, for the presentation. My question for you is, we are taking on the most ambitious capital projects plan, I think, that we ever have at the city. And I think that is a good thing, considering the circumstances that we're under, the economy of the country, the province, and the city. This is to help us support and boost our local economy. The money stays around here. There's work for people to do. And the long-term benefit is it does generate revenue for us. However, with such an ambitious plan, are we able to get everything out in time? That's always an issue for us, the timely manner of getting out tenders and such. Do you have some confidence that we can get this work out? I know a number of the projects will be over multiple years, but are we ready? Do we think we can get people to do this work? Because it's very ambitious.
through your worship to Councillor Fawcett. I'm confident we can, as you indicated. The two major projects, I think, being the Southwest Lift Station and Southeast Drainage, are both well underway in the design stages. The consultants that we have on retainer right now for the Southwest Lift Station are currently working on detailed design with the intention to put a first phase contract out early in the summer of 2022. So we do anticipate starting construction this coming summer, and that's on the Southwest Lift Station. In the Southeast Drainage, again, we have an RFP out right now to undertake detailed design of the Southeast Drainage, and that closes here next week. So hopefully within about a 3-week period, we have our consultant that will go through the final design. That RFP identifies developing tender contracts for the city to be able to go to tender again late spring, early summer of this year to undertake phase 1 of that project. Both projects are a 2, and the drainage one almost a 3-year project. So there will be other stages of design and tender going out in subsequent years. But I feel quite confident at this point with the funding in place that we can move both of those projects forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Lupke is next, followed by Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Allard. I do have a couple of questions on the Southeast Drainage project. The first of which is, you mentioned about being ambitious. I think 35 million plus for all the work. But from the 2022 standpoint, what parts of that project do you reasonably expect to complete this year?
So we've broken the project into several phases, as I've indicated. Phase 1 is kind of the main drainage corridor, which goes from what several refer to as the Island Lake Pond, which is just south of the Crocus School. And there'll be infrastructure designed and built that'll take water out to just east of 17th Street East. There's some open land in there that the city is now in possession of. There are also other retention ponds within that area between 1st Street and 17th Street. So that is a phase 1 project. We hope to start early summer. Phase 2 project would be construction of a large retention pond, which is, again, just east of 17th Street East. So southeast of that intersection of 17th and Richmond. And later in the year, it would be our intention to tender the construction of that larger retention pond. So as you can see, we're kind of phasing the work. Some of that work would carry on into 23. And there would be other phases, as an example, a trunk coming from 1st Street and Richmond Avenue, going south into this main, would be a typical phase 3, which may not be recognized until sometime in 2023.
I appreciate that, and I guess one of my kind of concerns is the kind of $30 million debenture this year if we are in fact only doing $12 million worth of that project. So I just wonder if phasing that debenture the same way we're phasing the project is a better play. I do have just another question on that project. We do have some retention pond construction scheduled for this year at the cemetery and 1st in Richmond, and I'm just wondering, have we looked at or been part of the design process to see if these could either be also purposed for recreational activities, or if the design is going to support natural vegetation and wildlife at those two sites.
A couple of years ago, working with Native Plant Solutions, which is an arm of Ducks Unlimited, developed natural storm retention pond guidelines. And the intent was that as the city constructs retention ponds, and I guess a retention pond would be an example of the Island Lake south of Crocus, rather than just leaving it as, a dugout, so to speak. That we now have guidelines in place that are draft, but we're certainly excited about including them into the design aspect of the cemetery pond, as an example, or the 17th Street pond. The design would enable us to, support the environment, have long-term sustainability from that perspective. And I think it would also become more attractive within the community, as opposed to just having a dugout that sometimes slumps. And our intent would be to, build an urban, healthy wetland within the city.
Thank you.
And Councillor Cameron is next, followed by Councillor Cullen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Allard. In looking at over the last number of years on budget day, and I'm not hopefully tipping my cards too much here, but I have advocated for an increase in the sidewalk and curbing program out of the gas tax reserve. This year at $150,000, which is a bit of an increase from year one, definitely on my term on council. But in looking at that, if that number was to increase further, does the city have the capacity to be able to complete that work? Because I think there's a level of importance that comes from increasing the sort of walkability and the active transportation ability of our city. So just wondering if there was an increase there, if the city has the capacity to complete that work in the budget year.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Cameron, I believe so, and it's not typically industry that holds us up. A lot of this work, is contracted out to the industry within the city of Brandon. I think that we have a strong industry in that area to be able to do that type of work. So whether we put a contract out that's worth $300,000 or $400,000, or we put a contract out that's worth $650,000, I would see no reason why that work couldn't be delivered within the summer months.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Cullen, followed by Councillor Chaboyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Allard. You'll be happy to know that probably a piece of this question won't be able to be answered by you. It'll probably have to be Dean or Val. In the recovery, you mentioned in the 34th Street crossing, there was a $350,000 a year debenture and interest payment. I'm looking to maybe see if we can get the cost recovery on what it is that we're generating for tax revenue once the full build out is done at the the housing complex that is being constructed at at that site. And the other thing is that when you talk about sidewalks and those kind of things in the budget, 34th Street, the crossing on the tracks also includes some pedestrian upgrades in that area. We have cross-country ski trails down there. We've got walking trails and other things that we used to just sort of go across the tracks, and it was a very unsafe manner. So we're also going to be improving that. When that 350 for the crossing, does that include the pedestrian upgrades as well?
Through your worship to Councillor Cullen, yes. The remaining work that is there is to basically complete the street and the multi-purpose trail that would cross the track and go down into that golf course area where we find a lot of those summer and winter amenities. So yes, that is the intention.
Sometime during the day, if you could just give me that cost recovery number as far as what we expect in tax revenue now that we're able to have that access point that goes across 34th Street.
Thank you. And Councillor Chaboyer is next.
Through to Mr. Allard, first I'd like to say thank you for your department having a commitment and focus to improving drainage throughout the city. My question is more on the short-term end of things. I just want to seek confirmation from you publicly in case the citizens are listening for the southeast corner, First Street Richmond neighborhood, that you're going to be doing local improvements to improve drainage in this year's budget.
To Councillor Chaboyer, through your worship. Yeah, we've been working with the consultants that have been doing the preliminary work for the entire southeast drainage project. As I indicated before, there is kind of a phase 3 that maybe down into the next 2 or 3 years. However, the city does recognize some of the flooding risk in the area of Richmond and First Street. There is a small retention pond in the southwest corner of that intersection that provides some benefit. However, some of the studies that we've done, it's identified that possibly those benefits are somewhat minimal. Just given the configuration and size of the infrastructure there, we are proposing to make some small improvements by expanding and or deepening that small retention pond that is in the southwest corner of that intersection. So it should relieve some of the flood risk there. Certainly the long-term solution is tying that intersection into the main that we're building under the southeast drainage. So there is some money proposed in the budget to undertake that work. And we also hope that the improvements that we make short-term can be tied into the long-term solution. So it's just not spending money that benefits us for 2 or 3 years into the future, but it'll help in the larger picture of our 40-year solution for drainage in the southeast.
Thank you for confirmation of that, and to stop the flooding of basements we're on the right track. Thanks.
Councillor Chaboyer, and Councillor Parker is next.
Thank you, Worship. Mark, my question is along the lines, actually, the same as Councillor Cullen's in one regard. I seem to remember that we were under the impression that the new taxation would service the debenture on the 34th Street project, and now that I see the number is that big, I don't think that's realistic. I know that was only half of the justification for doing that piece, and the other half was to allow some egress and access to Brandon's longest cul-de-sac, Donald Avenue. So I know there's another piece to that, but I am interested in seeing that number as well, just to see exactly where it's at. The other part I have, and I apologize for not sending this to you previously, and if you need time, I'm happy. But under contract services, page 90, our contracts did go down 150, and then software and licenses are up 155,000. Do those two correlate? Is one replacing the other, or is it kind of a bit of a shell game, or can you explain those two? And again, if you need some time, you can email back, or I can share the response, or whatever works.
Trying to hide, similar to what Alexia had identified, some things that were were kind of previously housed under contracts, and now we've kind of moved them into software licensing and that type of stuff. So there hasn't been a huge change overall in those areas. Again, we've just adjusted to try and be a little bit more transparent and from a financial perspective on where we budget and where we charge that work.
Thanks. I think that's okay. It's only 80,000 more overall, but I think Councillor Barry touched on some of that with you, so thanks.
Thank you very much. That was the last hand that I did see up, but I'll just make sure I didn't miss anybody. We have it. Thank you very much, Mr. Allard, for another excellent presentation on a very big section. So we will move on to the next one. Again, in Development Services Division is the property and parking section. Well, actually, we're going to hear from a few sections led by Ryan Nickel. So I'll let Ryan take it away. I will note, I think it's probably obvious to Council, we're rather behind on our list, which is kind of typical. On the early date of this thing, and then we do seem to catch up. But if everybody could be as succinct as possible, including the presenter, it will be helpful. So take it away, Ryan.
Thanks, Your Worship. Are the slides brought up for Council? Okay, right on. Just next slide. Perfect. Thanks, Amber. For Your Worship to Council, we'll make sure we keep the pace going. Mark's always a tough act to follow. So starting off with the real estate piece, and I'm trying to frame properties real estate because it's the focus is purchasing, selling, leasing to achieve council and community priorities. Jumping right into the main drivers. It's the reserve allocation request is the biggest driver of the change to this budget. The ask is for $200,000, and that's to continue to work towards the land acquisition strategy, and particularly the infrastructure component, which there was a resolution passed by City Council to establish that as a very high priority, especially it relates to some of the drainage projects Mark Allard was talking about. There's another pond we need in the southeast Brandon area, as well as an outflow from to the Gun Club coulee from some of that drainage in the South Brandon catchment area. We're looking to do some parking lot improvements, so there's an extra $20,000 asked there. That's for the library arts parking lot. There was some of the feedback was the safety concerns and the parking, and particularly related to staff as we went through the conceptual design and community engagement process. So that's where that $20,000 is coming from. A smaller amount, but nonetheless something, is $8,000 set aside for environmental monitoring. We'll continue to need to pay for that until that property on Princess is developed downtown. Major purchases, some of them have budget implications here. Some are budget implications in other budgets. We're just wrapping up the library building conceptual design this year, and we'll be bringing something to council here shortly. One of the important components here, not directly related to the design, is the building maintenance fund for that building. We're looking at lots of improvements that are hopefully going to bring new energy downtown, but those aren't all that helpful if we're not maintaining the building. So I know the building maintenance crews bring forward a capital plan for that building, and I would encourage council to support it. Another component there is $250,000 that's also included in one of those reserves, I think, for the building, and that's for the hope that if we're lucky enough to get a federal grant, the federal grant would be $750,000, our contribution would be $250,000, and if that was successful, we'd be able to move forward with the first phase of the project this year. Unfortunately, that I was hoping that grant would be released before budget, but it hasn't been. It's in its final stages. But I'd encourage council to leave it in because we are in the final stages of that grant, and we'd like to take advantage of it if we're granted those funds. Other things that we're involved with, including looking at leasing opportunities at AR McDermott, is going to cost some money up front, but make us some money long term. as well as actively working with Brand Downtown Development Corporation, exploring options to see some development on that at the Princess site at 9th and 10th Street downtown. As always, the real estate function is looking at implementing council strategic priorities through land acquisition, sale, and leasing to achieve all priorities, whether it be from affordable housing to infrastructure to downtown to green space, and we'll continue to do that. Next slide, Amber. So in terms of the kind of the key financial drivers, I've already talked about it. Under parking lots, the main driver there is $20,000 in there for lighting for the Library Arts Building, and that's something, once again, that was directly attributable to the community and stakeholder engagement process. Under property administration, the main driver there is the reserve request allocation of $200,000. Last year, the request was $175,000, and council chose to allocate $75,000. Right now, there's $300,000 in the reserve. So being a straight shooter, that question could be, would $300,000 be enough for next year? It could be, but we're looking at some pretty significant requirements even past next year. So the priorities next year are Braycrest intersection, southeast on to the east of First Street, outflow to South Brandon. So those are all infrastructure priorities, and arguably we could do that with what's in there right now, but coming soon thereafter is the rest of that southeast infrastructure segment, as well as trying to figure out how to bring the Princess site downtown to developable state, which includes the expensive demolition of an existing former bowling alley. So to get ahead of that is really important, and to look out not just at the immediate next year, but a few years down the line. And that's it for that section. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Didn't have any hands right off. And they certainly could reserve their opportunity. You're going to be on for a couple of sections. If something comes to mind, feel free to add in. So just keep carrying on there, Ryan. Thank you.
Right on, Amber, could you go back to the presentation? We'll jump right into the planning and buildings one. Perfect. Thank you. So the next costing centers under the department deal with planning and buildings. The main drivers of the budget changes, although there's not much of a budget change, is the city plan, and it's not much of a budget change because that's being funded through the reserve. A portion of that is funding an additional term position that will help support us doing better community engagement. And the residual portion, we're looking to use most of that working with the environment group on a third-party review of the city plan, as well as some further research into key policy areas that will impact the community, including movement, smart cities, which is the discussion on technology and cities of the future, as well as sustainability. Sustainability will be the key focus, and part of the partnership is partnering with the environment group on, there would be a climate change action plan prepared as part of this. So synergies within the corporation on trying to do things together. A little bit of an odd one is credit card charges. They've gone up significantly, $30,000. That's related to development charges. The credit card charges have to come from some costing center, and this is where we're anticipating they come from. We did explore alternatives to perhaps avoid credit card charges, but they resulted in us providing poor customer service, which isn't something that we want to do. So that's why that's going up. We already talked about the city plan. That's going to be the big focus of the planning group this year. It's the first time the city's had its own development plan, so it's very exciting, and we're planning on doing as much community engagement as we can in creative ways, especially during COVID. We want to continue to prioritize downtown implementation and industrial plan implementation. Downtown, we know the Downtown Task Force is working on implementation tools, and we're actively working with the Downtown Development Corporation and economic development on incentives, especially looking at priority sites and industrial plan, working with engineering on linking infrastructure with land use and trying to create some more opportunities for subdivision and the availability of serviced land. On the building side, we're going to continue rolling out the really successful flood protection program from last year that was very well received from the community. Although it's not in this costing center that's funded from the utility. Of course, we'd encourage council to continue that program and help our residents create their homes more resilient to these high water events. As always, our actions are aligned with council's strategic plan, our commitment to continued improvement in efficiency and tracking our permit timelines. I've already talked about the implementation of the plans and having a focus on implementation and not just planning. So we see tangible results in the community of our planning, as well as ensuring whatever we do, we're doing in a coordinated manner. Planning can never be done in isolation. So working with our key partners and other departments and the community to make positive change happen. So next slide, Amber. Looking at what the change looks like year over year. I don't love the year over year change. That's just a template. What we brought forward in the last budget was a 26% decrease. So it was favorable. And so this year it bounced back a little bit, but it's still favorable when you compare it to 2 years ago. And that's because my position is filling multiple roles of the chief planner and director, and it's working quite well. In terms of the drivers of the changes, they're pretty typical in building safety, just related to typical salary increases. There's no increase in positions. That's just typical increases. On the heritage side of things, it's just a very small costing center, so it's a similar type of increase as well. Planning and development wise, it's the same type of piece. I've already spoken to the impact that the city plan's having. That's getting funded from the reserve and the credit card piece with development charges. So if you look at it just from the credit card component, it's actually becoming more efficient or favorable compared to last year's proposed budget. Once again, I was trying to be speedy, hopefully not too fast, but if you could let me know if you have any questions, we'll continue on.
Including mine, so Councillor Cameron can lead off.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be expedient as well. Thanks, Ryan, for your presentation. Through you too, Ryan. Just wondering, with that flood protection program, I know that was something that Council introduced last year with a great deal of success. In looking over the budget document, can you point to where it is there, or is it something that has to be a budget day addition as it was last year?
Yeah, through Your Worship to Councillor Cameron, I think it's through the utility. That's perhaps something that could be clarified through finance later on, because it's associated with the quality and the resiliency piece. And my understanding, it was $100,000, and there was a grant applied for through other levels of government to top that up.
To ensure that if it wasn't something that was in there, that it was something that Council was able to put in tomorrow. So thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Fawcett, please.
Yes, thank you. Through Your Worship, this is more of a personal conversation between Ryan and I. I just had Matt resend me the BAPD stuff that I'll sign off on, which will help your budget.
More money is always a good thing, especially at the time of budget.
Yeah.
I didn't see any other hands up, so I'll plug myself in now. And you did highlight this a little bit, Ryan, the credit card charges, and I guess some of us that are in business as well are certainly kind of familiar with the situation, and it's really a kind of a double-edged sword. Like we're trying to increase efficiency, accessibility, customer convenience, and what have you, and yet the credit card charges can be quite significant, and they do certainly vary, I think, at times depending on the type of credit card that the user is using. And in my view, they're suitable for sort of small purchases, if you want to call that. If you're just booking a small permit that might be a few $100s, it's one thing. But when you mention development cost charges, we're talking about significant sums of money sometimes. Obviously, tens of thousands of dollars, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and typically in business, that's not as, I know in my own business, my suppliers wouldn't let me put tens of thousands of dollars on my credit card. So I'm thinking we're going to have to review that. It's probably not going to impact the budget, but between your department and probably other departments through our finance department. And nowadays there are numerous other platforms that can be used for the convenience, such as I guess kind of e-transfers that can be used to make it still as convenient as it accessible without having to incur the significant charges. So I'm not sure how deeply you've looked into that so far. Maybe you could first tell me that much, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, to your worship. We did meet with finance and discuss this with Val, kind of on the same concerns you had with the budget process, and explored establishing minimums. Also looked at different programs. Some of the challenges are the program that we use for permitting doesn't directly work with some of these other methods of payment. And part of the user friendliness is that there'd be some complications there in terms of trying to locate other programs. We discussed minimums in terms of having people come into the office and make payments through other mechanisms. Then that didn't seem all that user friendly considering our desire to have people work online. So not to say that we couldn't explore and propose alternatives. The alternatives we proposed just proposed some significantly more complexity for the customer. But if that's a trade-off that council's okay with, I mean, we could go back and explore that further.
And to be honest with you, sometimes it's not the minimums you're worrying about; it's more the maximums. So it's these big ticket items that are really a significant impact on this thing, and that might be the end of it. But I won't tie up too much time in this forum to do that. That'll be a future thing. It is a budget item, but I can't see that we can adjust that until we've identified a solution. So thanks for that. I'm just looking, are there any other hands up? Not seeing others. Thank you for that, Ryan. Sorry, was that your last segment? Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry. That's we're done. Yep.
Good. Okay. Thanks again. You hit up another very important part of our corporation, and always very well prepared, and we thank you for that. So carrying on is other big important areas are Brandon Fire and Emergency Services, and we will be welcoming Chief Scott McDonald to take on all of that. So welcome, Chief.
Mayor and Council. If I could get my slides up there. Thanks, Amber. In regards to the 2022 Brandon Fire Emergency Service proposed budget, the main drivers of this year's budget are increased EMS revenue. This is due to a year-to-year increase in local long-distance call volumes, which includes emergency responses and local and long-distance interfacility transfers. As well as that, we'll see an increase in fees tied to this, increase in long-distance transfer rates, wait time rates, and treat-no-transport rates. As well, we see increase in labor costs, and this is costs associated with increased service delivery, as well as contractual obligations in regards to labor costs. Major purchase and projects of 2022 for Brandon Fire Emergency Services is a security cameras, which is in the second year of a 3-year replacement cycle. Photocopier, which is for basic administrative use. Tablets, which are used by suppression and prevention for property information and inspections. And a thermal imaging camera, which is a 6-year life cycle replacement. In regards to Council's strategic plan, Brandon Fire and Emergency Service continues to support Council's strategic plan through ongoing education, training, and service delivery of emergency and non-emergency medical responses, as well as fire protection services to the citizens of Brandon. In 2021, Brandon Fire Emergency Services responded to 6,134 emergency medical calls for service. This resulted in 6,746 patient contacts. These responses ranged from interfacility transfers to advanced care life support, and included in this call volume were 713 scheduled long-distance transfers. In 2021, Brandon Fire Emergency Services responded to 895 fire service calls, ranging from structure fires, false alarms, motor vehicle accidents, and investigations. In 2021, the Fire Prevention Division, with operational support, completed 1,237 fire inspections. As well, the public fire educator presented 245 fire safety presentations to schools and various groups within the city, both in person and online due to COVID restrictions. In summary, Brandon Fire Emergency Services total call volume, excluding fire inspections and safety presentations, was 7,029. We move to the next slide. This slide is reflective of our 2022 proposed budget and the changes over the 2021 approved budget in regards to the delivery of service to both ambulance and fire, most of which were driven by what I just discussed, as well as the increase in costs of maintaining our fleet of fire vehicles. So for 2022, we're proposing a 2.5% increase over our 2021 approved budget. And I am open to any questions.
Challenging area. We've got numerous hands up. We'll lead off with Councillor Lupke.
Your Worship, I wish to discuss personnel staffing issue with the chief and would recommend that perhaps we go in camera for that.
Okay, all right. I think what we'll do then is we're going to cover off a few other questions, and that way we'll determine if there are other in-camera issues and then group them all together. So thanks for giving us that heads up. So I've got Councillor Barry, Cullen, and Parker so far yet. So we'll channel through them, and if they happen to have any in-camera things, we'll park them in with Councillor Lupke. So go ahead, Councillor Barry.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Through to Chief McDonald. Thank you again for the presentation, Chief. I know it's nice of a follow-up to the one we had a month and a half ago. Part of my question was going to be personnel. Councillor Lupke's brought that up. We'll go on camera. So I'm just going to be very direct. We've seen a lot in the media that's been reported lately through social media, through our local newspaper and that about some of the stresses, trials, and tribulations we've been having in the fire department. My one question is to you, as we as council, as we sit here at budget time, what can we do to help fire and EMS overcome some of these problems? What can we do for you today and tomorrow that's going to help with some of these stressors?
Again, we would ask for your support in regards to our challenges that we are facing in regards to the delivery of services. I truly believe that we need to continue to work with Shared Health and to find long-term solutions to our pressures that we are facing currently. And I would ask council support that and intervene where they possibly can to support our goal of having adequate resources to meet our response needs.
I'm going to go a little deeper in that, Scott, with active resources to help your current needs. Can you kind of outline that a bit for us?
Our call volumes continue to increase in regards to emergency medical services, and that has a carryover impact onto our fire response services. The resources that we have in play right now are being stressed on the EMS side. EMS makes up approximately 90% of my call volume, and that's where we're seeing the most pressure. So we're going to need help on addressing the pressure on the EMS side to continue to provide all the services that Brandon Fire Emergency Services provides.
Have Councillor Cullen, then Parker, and Fawcett.
Thank you, Chief. And I'm going to try to. It's very similar along the lines of the question that has just been asked to you. So I'm going to ask it in my way is, in this budget, what do you have in here that would cover us what our city's requirements would be in regards to the partnership that we have with Shared Health? So let's say, for example, Shared Health were to increase the capacity of the ambulance service provincially 10%. Are we seeing in these numbers, or is there numbers in this budget that would support that increase in order to take the pressure off the EMS service? Our contribution as shown in this document.
Through your worship to council, I cannot speak for Shared Health and what their plans are going forward and what the actual service delivery model is going to be. So the numbers that are reflected in this current budget are the numbers that would reflect our current abilities to deliver the service with the resources we have.
Okay, so I'll follow up. So right now, again, our partnership with Shared Health, what is the percentage that we provide as opposed to the percentage that they provide? So when we've got a crew and an ambulance that's going out, if we decide to add another crew onto that, or not we decided, Shared Health decided that they were going to do this, what would be our contribution that we'd have to budget for this year in order to take care of that?
Operational plan in regards to staffing is where 50% of Brandon Fire Emergency Services resources are, for a lack of a better term, tied to EMS resources. So if we were to increase staffing levels, or Shared Health was to increase staffing levels, that would probably have to come through a funding model from Shared Health, and then we would look at the impact that has on our service delivery.
I know that it's probably overcomplicated right now, but okay, so let's say right now, what percentage do we pay of the ambulances and the EMS if, let's say there was a trip to Winnipeg, what is the bill to us with that trip? And I know that what it does is it pulls resources away from the city of Brandon, so therefore there isn't somebody there to pick somebody up in a parking lot, as we've seen. So it's in order for us to do this, we're going to have to increase the service by increasing the amount of ambulances and people that are available to them. What would be our financial responsibility to that increase under the current system that we have right now with Shared Health?
Through your worship to council, under the current system right now, my expectations would be that Shared Health would cover those costs.
Thank you. That's the answer I was looking for.
Yeah, thanks
Okay,
for that,
sorry.
Councillor Cullen, and for the chief, and to the chief, and he's probably aware of this, council's accustomed to sort of lots of other services that we might get participation from the senior levels of government where it entails though a contribution on the part of the on the city, and so that's I think why a few councillors are trying to clarify that in the event that Shared Health, you know, does increase the service as we need it. I think council just wants to make sure we're not caught flat-footed or caught short of having our contribution ready. And your view, it's not quite the same in this equation as we're accustomed to in others. So thanks for drawing all that out. And we're going to go to Councillor Parker, then Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. This should be fairly quick. Chief, I noticed your fleet equipment maintenance line went up 24% year over year. It's a bit of a recurring theme throughout our budget. So I'm just wondering if you received an explanation. I mean, that's a fairly significant increase, and I'm just wondering what's driving that, if you know.
Through your worship to council, you'd probably be better off getting an explanation from fleet in regards to that. My understanding that is the increased cost to maintain the entire fleet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Fawcett.
Yes, thank you, through your worship. As noted, over the last decade or so, well, since 2001, really, we've had to be monitoring both our fire emergency services and our police force for salaries, which of course far have exceeded anything else in the area. So we'll continue to have to watch that. That being said, right now I want to give you credit, yourself, this worship, our management that has been trying for quite some time, to deal with Shared Health to try to resolve our issue, and that's been ongoing for quite some time. There's been a lot more public lately, which may or may not correspond with contract negotiations, I don't know. But continue to work with that. I know our job is to lobby and work with Shared Health because it's not just Brandon, it affects the whole region. We did meet with AMM the other day. We continued to push them for the same issues because it has a great effect on the municipalities. So we will continue to do our job to try to get Shared Health to work with us to better our system. And in the meantime, we'll continue to do locally the work that we need to do with the department. So I appreciate the work you've been doing lobbying, and it's unfortunate it wasn't as public the last couple of years as it is now. But keep up with the good work in the whole department there. Everybody is doing an awful lot of good work, and we're proud of our department.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Councillor Fawcett. That was the last hand I had up, other than Councillor Lupke's, but
I do have another question.
the general one,
before we
yeah, go ahead. That'd be good.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the Chief. Chief, I just wondered if we could get an update on the Quint replacement. I know this has been kind of in our budget line last year and this year, and just kind of wondering, it's budgeted for 1.8 million, if you still think that's a fair number, or kind of where we're at with that equipment replacement.
Through Your Worship to Council, the replacement of the aerial apparatus has been a challenge, and obviously COVID has had a huge impact on that. As far as costs go, we're working with Fleet on find out what most current costs will be going forward, and we'll continue to work with Fleet this year on the replacement of that apparatus.
Thanks for raising that, Councillor Lupke. The Chief will know we've had a number of conversations about that. It is a very significant investment. The Chief and his team are trying to be creative. I'm making suggestions, even when you get something that's that large and significant. Sometimes I believe that maybe we got to be creative in terms of it being maybe even a regional asset. I'm not sure how operationally that can fly. I mean, we do have the benefit of the fire college here that needs to train on stuff like that. We've got other entities not too far away, Shiloh and so on and so forth. It's one of these vehicles that I won't say that it's like our armored rescue vehicle for the police, but that's considered a kind of regional asset, and therefore we got participation from the senior levels of government. So I'd like to think we can explore at least having those discussions, which we are doing, and the Chief and his team are trying to be as innovative and creative on this one as they can. So thanks for raising that. Hope I didn't put words in your mouth there, Chief. So very good. That, I think, is the end of the general questions that we have, and I'm going to look to the city clerk here a little bit in terms of our procedure, even electronically, to move in camera for a few minutes.
Yes, Your Worship, we can certainly, we'll have to close the feed for the meeting while they're in camera. The other suggestion that actually Mr. Hammond just suggested is we could do this tomorrow morning, but if you want to address it now, we'll just keep Chief McDonald online, but we would shut down the feed for the in-camera portion.
Yeah, so that was the other thing. We were planning on having an in-camera component tomorrow to cover off any areas like that might be more sensitive, personnel or property matters or the like, so we can go either direction, whatever's most suitable.
I think my preference would be to deal with it now.
Okay, that's fine then. We'll give you just a second to shut off the feed. We will be able to keep the Teams part going for the...
I'm going to send him, so Chief McDonald, I'm going to send you a separate link